On this Thursday night, drug-dealing doctors arrested in Matthew Perry's death. Damning new details about the actor's fatal overdose, who has been charged, and how they profited.
These defendants took advantage of Mr. Perry's addiction issues to enrich themselves.
Too unsafe to work. Why federal fisheries officers say they've had enough as violence runs rampant in Nova Scotia's fishing industry. Plus, left behind.
There's no hope from Canada, so we have been in a very bad situation.
The Afghans who aided Canada's military still waiting for their help 3 years after the Taliban's takeover. And snapping sunflowers, how capturing that Instagram moment could endanger livelihoods as well as your health.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. There's new information tonight about the death of actor Matthew Perry. 5 people, including Perry's personal assistant and 2 doctors, are charged with causing his overdose death. The star of Friends was found unresponsive in the hot tub of his Los Angeles home last year. An autopsy revealed he died of acute effects of ketamine. Perry had long struggled with substance abuse and addiction, and prosecutors said today those close to him profited off that.
These defendants took advantage of Mr. Perry's addiction issues to enrich themselves. They knew what they were doing was wrong. They knew what they were doing was risking great danger to Mr. Perry, but they did it anyways.
Prosecutors allege those doctors gave Perry 20 vials of ketamine in exchange for $55,000 in cash. Neetu Garcha has our top story on the charges and the investigation.
I like the theme of people trying to improve themselves.
Actor Matthew Perry had been outspoken about his addiction issues and how he wanted to help other people. Now some of those tasked with helping him are being charged in his death.
In the fall of 2023, Mr. Perry fell back into addiction, and these defendants took advantage to profit for themselves.
5 people have been charged in Perry's death, including Jasveen Sangha, known as the Ketamine Queen, and licensed medical doctor Salvador Placencia. They allegedly worked with another doctor, Mark Chavez, to obtain the drug and distribute it to Perry with the help of Perry's live-in assistant, Kenneth Iwamasa. Eric Fleming, an acquaintance of Perry's, admitted in court documents he distributed the ketamine that killed Perry. Fleming, Iwamasa, and Chavez have agreed to plead guilty. The indictment says Placencia wrote in a text message, quote, "I wonder how much this moron will pay."
He also stated in text messages that he wanted to be Mr. Perry's sole source of supply. On one occasion, he injected Mr. Perry with ketamine, and he saw Mr. Perry freeze up and his blood pressure spike. Despite that, he left additional vials of ketamine.
Ketamine is a liquid. It's meant to be administered through an IV at a doctor's office. This compares to Michael Jackson, to Anna Nicole Smith, Williams, other high-profile celebrities who have overdosed.
Former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani says the doctors are looking at 10 to 20 years in prison. As for Sangha, who was allegedly also dealing methamphetamine,
that's a more serious controlled substance, and she apparently caused the death of another individual previously, someone named Cody, in 2019. She's looking at a possible life sentence.
An autopsy shows Perry had high levels of ketamine in his blood. He's reported to have been getting ketamine infusion therapy for depression and anxiety. Neetu Garcha, Global News, Vancouver.
In Nova Scotia, fisheries officers say enforcing regulations has become so dangerous they can't do it anymore. At least 34 officers are refusing to conduct patrols on and off the water because of threats of violence in the region. Those in the commercial fishing industry say there's rampant poaching and lawlessness. As Heidi Petrachik explains, they're asking authorities to get a handle on the situation before it boils over again.
The group representing commercial lobster fishers says this video is proof there's illegal fishing in southwestern Nova Scotia while the lobster season is closed.
We post videos on social media of people engaging in egregious illegal activity in the fishery, yet no enforcement action is taken.
But Colin Sproul doesn't blame fisheries officers on the front lines.
There is political interference in the justice process in fisheries in Nova Scotia by the Prime Minister's office and by the Privy Council.
He says federal prosecutors won't charge illegal fishers due to the government's sensitivity around Indigenous fishing rights, leaving DFO enforcement officers in what they say is a dangerous position. Their union confirms 34 are refusing to work, filing letters of complaint referring to, quote, danger if left unmitigated that will cause harm to myself, citing attempted assaults using vehicles and vessels and utterances of violence and death threats.
You're going to ask yourself two things. Why am I here? And why am I putting myself and my family in danger?
There has been a spate of violent incidents in the area under police investigation this year, including several suspicious fires, a Molotov cocktail thrown through a window, a police car torched, and shots fired into a home. But the Nova Scotia RCMP says it doesn't believe all those are related to the fisheries dispute. 4 years ago, tempers flared and violence erupted over the lucrative fishery.
Just watch it, Jeff.
Now there's concern that could happen again. Mi'kmaq lobster fisher Stephen Westhaver says he was confronted by commercial fishers this week, damaging one of his traps. Even though he's permitted to fish for food, he had to call 911.
They took it amongst themselves to illegally haul it and smash it.
The Unified Fisheries Conservation Alliance stresses the poachers are a small but disruptive group, taking advantage of the absence of enforcement, urging action from Ottawa in a situation they worry could escalate again. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
We're learning more tonight about how the RCMP tracked a father and son accused of plotting a terrorist attack in Toronto ahead of their arrest. It's not clear how and when Ahmed and Mustafa El-Didi entered Canada, but last month they were arrested in a Richmond Hill hotel after a tip-off from another country. The RCMP claimed the pair was planning an attack in the name of the so-called Islamic State. Mercedes Stevenson has been following this. Mercedes, what can you tell us about the RCMP surveillance operation?
Donna, Global News has learned exclusive information on how the plot was discovered. National security sources say that after an Allied tip warned Canada to watch out for the El-Didis, it was the RCMP investigation that discovered they were allegedly in the active stages of planning a mass casualty terrorist attack. The scale and intensity of the investigation was significant and ramped up as the RCMP's concerns escalated in a matter of days. The El-Didis were placed under 24-hour covert surveillance by the Mounties, tracked and followed everywhere they went with technological and human surveillance. Specialized police teams capable of thwarting a sudden attack shadowed the father and son. As the alleged threat from the El-Didis grew, police brought in the RCMP's emergency response team. Specialists in counterterrorism, seen here. On July 29th, after sources say the El-Didis filmed a so-called martyrdom video with an ISIS flag and weapons, police moved in with overwhelming force to stop what they believed was an imminent attack. Donna?
All right, Mercedes in Ottawa, thanks. In India, hundreds of thousands of women marched through the night demanding justice after the brutal rape and murder of a young doctor. Thousands of people took to the streets of Kolkata, where a 31-year-old doctor in training was raped and killed at a government-run hospital where she just finished a 36-hour shift. Colleagues say she fell asleep in a seminar room because there were no other facilities for trainee doctors to sleep. A police volunteer has been arrested. Today, as India marked its Independence Day, comments from the local police commissioner did nothing to quell the anger.
What has happened here is because of the media, the wrong media campaign. My men have worked day and night to detect this case, to collect evidences.
What we want is justice given to the fellow resident who was brutally murdered, and also a Central Protection Act for protection of the doctors so that there is no further incident happening in future.
In his Independence Day address to the nation, Prime Minister Narendra Modi called for strict punishment. Another violent rape and murder in 2012 led to tougher laws in India, but violence against women there remains a chronic issue. After 10 months of war, there is not much hope the latest round of peace talks in Doha, Qatar, will lead to anything. Hamas is not taking part, and in Gaza, the death toll has reached a new milestone. More than 40,000 Palestinians have now been killed. That's according to the health ministry run by Hamas. Morgues and cemeteries in Gaza are overflowing. The American President Joe Biden told reporters on Tuesday he is not giving up on reaching a peace deal, but that it's getting harder to remain optimistic. The negotiations are seen as the best chance of ending the war in Gaza and staving off a wider regional conflict. Earlier this week, Hamas's representative in Lebanon says its delegation would not participate because he believes Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is deliberately prolonging the war and not interested in ending it. Ukraine says it set up a military office inside Russian territory it now controls and has made further gains. Ukraine's president was briefed by his top military commander today, who claims to have taken the largest town yet. And Ukraine claims to have a command office in Sudha. That's a former administrative center for Russia's Kursk region. Russia claims it did retake one village today and repelled attacks on several others. But more than 120,000 Russian civilians have now fled the border region. The campaign trail heats up in the U.S. Coming up, Kamala Harris's political momentum as Donald Trump struggles to keep up. Mississauga-based Canada Jetlines is ceasing operations immediately and grounding all flights. The carrier flew within Canada and to destinations across the U.S., Mexico, and the Caribbean. Canada Jetlines says it has been unable to find the capital needed to stay afloat and plans to file for creditor protection. It is the third Canadian carrier in less than a year to stop flying. Canada Jetlines says passengers should contact their credit card company for refunds. In the U.S., both presidential candidates are making promises about how they'll make Americans more prosperous. Former President Joe Biden was back campaigning today, supporting Kamala Harris, who is talking mostly about policy, while Republican nominee Donald Trump is sticking to his usual approach: insults, trash talk, and lies. Jackson Prosco reports.
It's the first time they've shared a stage since the torch was passed. Vice President Kamala Harris heaped praise on the man who stood aside for her.
It is my eternal and great, great, great honor, I have to tell you, to serve with this most extraordinary human being and American and leader, our President, Joe Biden.
At an event on lowering prescription drug prices, Biden only briefly acknowledged the campaign that he's now sitting out.
Let me tell you what our Project 2025 is. Beat the hell out of them.
The coming days will see Harris chart her own course on the issues, potentially distancing herself from Biden, especially on the economy, where he's deeply unpopular.
She started to stake out a little bit of different ground on U.S. policy towards Israel and Gaza. She's making a major economic speech, laying out an economic agenda that's going to be a little bit different than the Biden agenda.
A disciplined message would be in stark contrast to Donald Trump's campaign.
That's a laugh of a person with some big problems.
Which keeps veering away from issues and into personal attacks on Harris. Thursday, he tried sticking to script on the economy, but still went off course.
She's been unbelievable in terms of her badness, but she can't do a better job because she doesn't know how to.
Republicans sound increasingly worried. Polls show Trump losing ground.
The campaign is not going to win talking about crowd sizes. It's not going to win talking about what race Kamala Harris is.
Trump is doubling down, bringing back Corey Lewandowski, his 2016 campaign manager, who wrote the book on letting Trump be Trump. On the campaign trail, there are signs voters may be looking for something different, a test of whether a tried and true strategy can succeed against a fresh face and a new message. Jackson Prosco, Global News, Washington.
Taylor Swift is back on tour after her concerts in Austria were canceled because of a terror plot. She performed the first of 5 shows in London today. Security is tight for all her concerts at Wembley Stadium, and fans without tickets are being told not to gather and listen from outside. Last week, her concerts in Vienna were called off. 3 suspects said to be inspired by the so-called Islamic State were arrested. Feeling betrayed ahead, why some Afghans say Canada left them behind. It's been 3 years since everything changed for the worse in Afghanistan. The U.S. pulled out and the Taliban took power again. The country is plunged into an economic crisis, and anyone advocating for women's rights or democracy is silenced. Canada has welcomed 40,000 Afghan refugees since August of 2021. But as Jeff Semple reports, many of those who worked for Canada's military never made it.
Dozens of Afghan families gathered outside a safe house in Pakistan, where they've been waiting for 3 years for the Canadian government to make good on its promise.
There's no hope from Canada, so we have been in a very bad situation.
Mohammed worked for the Canadian Embassy in Afghanistan for 5 years, promoting women's education, which the Taliban fiercely opposes. As Taliban gunmen clawed back control of Afghanistan in the summer of 2021, Mohammed's family went into hiding, along with hundreds of others who'd worked for Canada. Mohammed's wife was 7 months pregnant, and their baby was born prematurely. As the country descended into chaos, the couple couldn't get to the hospital. Their baby died 2 days later.
We are not feeling well. My wife get depression, my children get depression.
Mohammed received this letter from the Canadian government requesting he be given safe travel to board an organized evacuation flight to Canada. Then an ISIS-K suicide bomber attacked Kabul's airport, suspending all flights. Instead of rescuing those who'd worked for Canada, it was recently revealed that Canadian special forces were diverted to help around 200 Afghan Sikhs with no ties to Canada. That request came from then Defense Minister Harjit Sajjan.
Because I'll be honest with you, it was utter BS.
He said he asked but never ordered the military to rescue the Sikhs, nor prioritize them. Veterans groups aren't buying it.
If he's pretending like he didn't know that that was going to be interpreted as an order, he's either extremely incompetent or he's lying.
Government documents show Canadian Sikh groups lobbied Ottawa for months before the Taliban takeover to rescue Afghan Sikhs and Hindus. But immigration officials said the minority group was generally not facing a direct threat and would not normally be prioritized for resettlement. The Trudeau Liberals, while campaigning for the federal election in September 2021, drafted a new temporary policy, Operation Canadian Safe Haven, to allow the rescue of all at-risk refugees, whether or not they have qualified under Canadian or Allied Forces special immigration programs. The result? Of the 3,700 Afghans rescued on evacuation flights, only around 500 had actually worked for Canada. Thousands of others were left behind, many fleeing here to Pakistan, living illegally, unable to work or go to school.
We don't have any financial support.
Fareshta Amini was an Afghan MP until the Taliban drove women out of politics. One of her colleagues, Taliban critic Mursal Nabizada, stayed behind and was later shot and killed. She was killed because of Canada's delayed process, Amini says. We believed in the compassion of the Canadian people, but now we find ourselves abandoned. The families rarely leave their Pakistan safe house, fearing arrest and deportation back to Afghanistan, ruled by a regime they helped to fight. Jeff Semple, Global News, Toronto.
Picture perfect next. The Manitoba farmer is trying to keep selfie seekers and their sunflowers happy. There's sad news about a former politician from BC. Chuck Stoll, a longtime Conservative MP, died on Tuesday. Stoll was first elected as a Reform MP in 1993 and represented the BC riding of Chilliwack-Fraser Canyon until his retirement in 2011. He held multiple portfolios in the government of former Prime Minister Stephen Harper. In a statement, his son Mark said Stoll died after a courageous battle with mesothelioma, a rare type of cancer. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre posted today, Stoll was a man of principle, integrity and compassion and a foundational member of our Conservative Party. Chuck Stoll was 67 years old.
I remember now. It was us. It was us.
Actress Gina Rowlands has died at the age of 94. She captivated audiences for decades with her emotionally raw portrayals of damaged women in films such as Gloria and A Woman Under the Influence. She later starred in The Notebook, a love story about a woman living with Alzheimer's disease, a condition she herself developed in her final years. Sunflowers are in full bloom in prairie fields right now. That sea of yellow makes for some stunning photos, but not everyone is thrilled with the selfie seekers wading through those flowers to get the perfect shot. Marnie Blunt explains how one farmer has come up with a solution to keep everyone happy.
A field of sunflowers in bloom, a picturesque summer scene in Manitoba. But the urge to snap a sunflower selfie is often a cause for concern among farmers like Lee Oatway.
When people are respectful and don't damage anything, it's not a big deal, but unfortunately we've had situations in the past where we've had a significant damage, and it's troublesome for us because there's a lot of effort put into this crop. It's our livelihood.
Outside of knocking over plants or taking sunflowers, Oatway says it can also pose a risk.
Safety issues for people going in. It's if you don't know, we may have sprayed a herbicide on the crop.
The Manitoba Crop Alliance says it's a concern they hear from farmers, and a little sunflower damage can go a long way.
There's about a third less plants in sunflowers than there would be corn, for example. So it's a big deal if you're knocking over just a few plants.
Morgan Cott with the Alliance says it also comes down to trespassing.
Every time I enter a field, I have permission, and it's, technically it's not legal just to walk in someone's fields.
A reason why farmer J.P. LeFloc is taking a different approach, inviting people directly into his sunflower field.
I noticed there was quite a few people stopping and taking pictures, and I've heard that two other farmers were having issues with people coming in their fields and damaging them.
LeFloc created a designated area for snapping a sunflower selfie, while supporting a cause close to his heart after a life-changing accident in 2020.
I had an injury, and I got the chance of getting STARS to pick me up and bring me to the hospital, and I wanted just to pay it forward, so I was hoping this would raise some money for STARS.
Allowing travelers to snap the perfect summer selfie for a good cause without damaging a farmer's bottom line. Marnie Blunt, Global News, Winnipeg.
And that is Global National for this Thursday. I'm Donna Friesen, and look at this. Tonight's Your Canada is this beautiful field near Notre-Dame-de-Lourdes, Manitoba, not too far from Altona, which is the sunflower capital of Canada. Thanks for watching. Jeff Semple will be at the Anchor Desk tomorrow, and I will see you again next week. Bye-bye.